back again. Now, on the M3 convertible hardtop, I have the left-hand C-pillar trim that I'm going to re-trim. Now, one of the reasons is because I'm doing the headlining new trim, and of course I want that to match, so I'm going to trim these as well. But also, if you can see this one, the guy bought it off, has got damage on the trim there, and I actually don't like that. It annoys me, that. So that's another reason I'm going to retrim it anyway. So same sort of thing in other videos. We've got to peel all this off, get rid of the old glue, and try not to tear or damage too much this fabric as you get it off, because we're going to use this fabric for our template on cutting out, marking out and cutting out our new fabric. Something else to be careful of when you're doing this trim, here we have a hinge, and there we have a hinge, and in here goes a little plastic latch. When we come to retrim it, need to be careful in putting the fabric around the hinge here, but also as we clean it up, we don't want to cut these or break these off or damage them, because it'll stuff the piece. Okay, and we need to make sure, especially with my new fabric being a little bit thicker, that what I found is need to make this quite clear, this opening when you put the latch back in, because the thicker fabric will affect the latch working properly. But talk about that a bit later. Let's get this off, cleaned up, and a new piece of fabric cut out. So without messing about, we'll start ripping it apart. So what we have here is the left-hand C-pillar from a E46 convertible M3, and we're going to strip off the old fabric and get the old glue off. So we'll crack on and let's get this done, and see you shortly. Now, there we have all the fabric off. When you take it off, be sure, if you can, not to tear it, because this is now our template to draw and cut out our new piece of fabric. However, put that aside for the moment, because we have a long, tedious, this will take a little while, tedious effort, in that we now have to take all this old foam off. Look at this, how bad the foam is. See what happens to it. Run your finger. Look at that. Which is why, one of the reasons why I am reupholstering it. But as I showed you before, on the fabric, I don't know if you can still see it, yes, mine had on an edge this sort of, if you can see that very well, damage on the fabric anyway, like a pull, or somebody's rubbed something on it or bumped something into it, or so that's another reason why I want to replace it anyway, of course, to match the new headlining coming anyway. So put that aside, we now have to put in an effort. This is what I use, is one of these. Oop, mine has a bit of a bladed edge. It's not sharp, but a bladed edge. I use a trusty old blade screwdriver in these grooves. And I also use this to scrape it a bit. So, essentially, I've got to spend some time, and I just scrape it off. Like so. Alright, so I'll get on and do that, and talk to you soon. Now they've got all the foam off. The bad part, or the hard work now comes actually. As you can see, all this white stuff, if you like, or this film, that's all the old glue. You can see the black bits there. All this old glue has to come off, and the only way, the best way I have found is to scrape it just like that. So I'll not video this because this takes a little while to do, depending on how easy the glue comes off, but I'm sure you don't want to sit and watch me scrape the glue off. So I'll go off and do that, and we'll come back when I get it all off. Finished using my scraper. I used the scraper and in some of the grooves a screwdriver, but managed to scrape it all off. It's actually come up quite well. And what I've done is also, by the way, just used a little bit of sandpaper, bit of old sandpaper, just to clear off any burrs that I might have had from scraping it away. The surface on this is quite smooth. There will be no doubt little scratches from where you scrape it away, but don't worry too much because you've obviously got nice new foam backed fabric to go on it. So now, don't forget to also remove all the foam. You've got to get rid of all of the foam and the glue from all of these edges. Get rid of it. So clean them all up. Okay. And I state again, be very careful of these hinges for the little door that goes on here, because they're little plastic things and they are quite weak. So you break them and it almost ruins the piece because you can't put the door back on. So anyway, with that said, let's get on with it. So put that aside for now. And I have, of course, my old piece of fabric, which is going to be my template. So put that aside. I get my nice new material, nice plush. I got relatively thick, I think it's a couple of mil, I think, fabric. It's thicker than the original factory foam, not a lot thicker, but you notice it. Anyway, so we put it with the black surface down. Be careful not to damage the fabric as it lays down. I'll just fold it in half like that. There we go. So we simply, and make sure, don't make the mistake I did early on. Frankly, you've got to be very careful. Don't make the mistake of having the fabric up on the back of the surface because you've cut the template out wrong, basically back to front. So, with that said, lay it down. This is what I did to the other ones. Lay it down like that. We want to spread it out so it's all nice and flat because we want these edges flat. We need all that. Okay. And I allow a little bit more fabric. Don't be too neat in cutting it, in drawing it out, cutting it around, because a little bit more is not going to hurt. We can always cut it away. It'd be a different story if you haven't made it big enough. So we just simply draw around it. So I'm just using a marker. That's all that is. Hold your fabric down. Right, and make sure your fabric's flat. You don't fold up because we need a good size here. So you don't need to be too accurate. Just draw along the edge because we can always trim this off as we glue it in place. So we just draw around the edge to get our pattern, like so. One of the reasons also for holding it down is because the old fabric will turn up a little bit, so we want it nice and flat. And here we go. Don't move it from where you had it. Just keep it flat like that as we draw gently along its edge. Right. We also need to account for these little bits here. You can see, because that little bit there, but actually goes around one of those hinges. So we draw down there and get our little hinge. Okay. See how easy it is to move the fabric. As I said, don't worry if it's a little bit too big. You can always cut that back, but we just want the general shape of this thing. Just around the edges, doesn't have to be perfect. Right. Now I won't be cutting on the line exactly. I'll still cut out a little bit further out from the lines to make sure I've got enough material, or fabric rather. Okay. And we keep going. Try as best as you can to hold that flat. I guess you probably could put this on a piece of cardboard and trace it out and then use that as the template, but here we are. Which undoubtedly, if you did it in cardboard, would be a lot easier to hold in place. Don't forget to draw out where this goes. This is your where the rear interior light mounts, so we need that cut out. I don't actually cut it out, but cut these slots in. Yep, and there we have it. We have our pattern. Draw some lines across this because later on we'll cut this out. We'll just cut lines along those lines. We won't cut the square out because that fabric has got to fold over the opening. But worry about that last. once the main piece is attached. Alright, so there we have it. And now it's a simple matter of cutting it out. And as I said, I do a rough cut out. Let's get this off so we can do away with the main piece. So I always give myself a little bit more. Like I keep saying, you can always cut it off. You want to make sure you've got enough fabric, because I don't worry about being too accurate around here. There we go. These cutout bits, don't worry about that for the moment. Just want to get the main shape. We'll worry about the intricate bits in a moment. There we are. Got our main piece. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Okay then. Now we can start being a bit more accurate with this. Clean up a bit of this. So don't worry about being too accurate. Just want a rough clean up, because as I say, this will be cut more accurate as we glue it to our piece. Okay. One of the things I can do to check with some of the cutouts is actually lay this back on. And now we can check a bit more on the bits we need to cut. Yeah. One of the things we need to worry about is this cutout here, this hole. That, worry about that when it's on the piece, is where the latch goes. And I found you need to cut a little bit more away from that to allow for the latch to work properly, because I've got thicker foam actually impinges on the latch. Yeah. A little bit in there, not too far in, like that. Where else do we need to cut it? Over here a little bit, not too far, there we go, a little bit here. And I would kind of leave it like that really for the moment, until we worry about, as we put it in place, then we'll see where it needs to be cut further. Just need some some marks there because we know it's got kind of like cut in there, but we can improve on those cuts as we attach the fabric. Move that away. Okay. Now, before you attach, of course, just checking the fabric so we haven't made any damage to this fabric at all. Here, looks alright, a little bit dusty, don't worry about that, that'll clean up. So, put that aside. What we need is our trim back, and we need the adhesive. Be careful with this stuff, obviously. Rather sticky and it kind of gets everywhere, this stuff. Rotten stuff to work with. Terrible, so be very careful. Don't want to spill that. So essentially, what I'm going to start with, grab my piece, my fabric there. I want to glue the main piece in place. So before I get too carried away, so you can see those little bits I marked out wrap around the hinges. They're quite important, that, so I've got to be careful there. But essentially what I do is we line it up, ready. So okay. Make sure it's going to reach around the edges and so forth. Right, because we've got angles there and so on, so the fabric will be taken up in those little angles. So we've got to make sure that it will cover the corner bits. There we are. Yep. Same with that. We'll be right, yep. Just lovely. Right, so that's kind of, so what I do, that's about the position we want it in. So just position it. Make sure that's right. And then I'll get my marker again. And what I do is just give it a rough mark along the main edges, so we know that the hole is there. Because this will allow me to place the main piece. Before we work on the edges, because we're going to stick the main piece down first. I'm going to do it in stages before we fold it around the edges. Going to stick it on the main piece, and then we'll come to these other edges and so on. So bit by bit. So okay, actually let's put another marker here, so we kind of know that that's where it's going to go. All right. Okay. Oh, sorry. Let's make another mark here. This gives us something to line up to when we place the piece. When we look over the top, you can see where the lines should be, the hinges should be, and all the rest of it. All right. So now to pull that away, and we have a vague outline of where the piece should be. I've got a mark here for that end. Check multiple times and do the job once. So, alright. Yeah, like that. There we go. that's where we're going to place it. Alright, about there. Okay, now it gets a bit more tricky. So place that aside. Now we need to cover the main surface in the adhesive. And as I say, I do bit by bit. So I kind of like do the main bit there and slowly come across here. Do not do these bits just yet, or that bit just yet. We want to get it on this main section first. So that kind of will centralise it, and then we can work the edges and everything around there. Alright? Okay. Let's get some adhesive on it. Now for the fun bit. So it can drizzle a bit on there, so I'll get my spatula thing. And we'll just put a bit, because we'll work it around with the applicator, but we'll just put a few big dribbles of this. So you should use this with by an open window or outside or something, because it's quite strong, this stuff, and the smell. We need a fair amount, because the time we spread this out, it will thin out quite a bit. So roughly spread that out, and we'll use the applicator in a second. Spread that out a bit. Right. Okay. A few nice dots are in there. It's getting a bit strong for me. There we go, that'll do it. Put this aside. Be careful, obviously you don't want to knock this over. Right job if you do. Get our applicator that's got the little teeth on it, and let's spread the glue out. Got a few minutes to work with it before it starts to set. We want it to get sticky anyway a little bit before we apply our fabric. And you'll find as you spread it out like this, you might actually need a little bit more. You'll see how it looked like a lot that I was putting on, but it actually spreads out rather thin. Just give it a little bit of over here. Okay, don't want it in there just yet. Okay, careful on those grooves, don't want it in the grooves yet. We'll come to that. Remember, I'm not going to do the edges at the moment, so I'll keep them clear. Right. Okay. Teeny bit over here. Come on. There you are. A few odd spots here and there. Have a check yourself. You may need a little bit more here and there, but there we go. As you check it. Yeah. Okay. So. So we'll leave that for a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes, thereabouts, or a few minutes, and be ready to stick down. We want it to get a little bit tacky. Alright, so wait for a moment and I'll be back in a minute.